Evil West is the definition of a 7th gen console game, and I'm here to tell you why you have to play it. Nowadays, a lot of games are massive blockbusters like God of War Ragnarok or The Last of Us or Red Dead Redemption 2, and for most people who are looking for something very gamey, then this game is for you. However, there is one type of gamer that I wouldn't recommend playing this game, but more on that later. Games are trying to be more nowadays, with deep narratives, wonderfully performed characters, tight gameplay that subverts expectations, and let's not forget massive open worlds with loads of bloat. But Evil West isn't concerned with this. It sets out to be a game and it achieves it wonderfully. If you think of a PS3 or 360 era game, you think of something linear in nature with combat arenas, followed by some walking and some light puzzles. Think Gears of War or Uncharted 1. They're not trying to hide the fact that they're a game, and that's okay. In fact, it's great. For me, Evil West has the gameplay of God of War 2018 with a bit more of a Devil May Cry sprinkling. At the start, combat is quite basic. You have a revolver, a rifle, and some pretty basic melee abilities. But at the very least, it was meaty and felt great to rip apart enemies. But it only gets better. Once you delve into the skill tree and unlock more abilities, you can do stuff like pull enemies towards you, uppercut them, and then punch them towards your next enemy. The best spectacle fighters have a steady build-up of abilities until the end where you have a whole arsenal that you can mix and match to your style, and Evil West has this in spades. Just look at this skill tree. There are so many upgrades, and guess what? Very few of them are stupid little incremental stat upgrades. They wildly change your existing moves or give you more moves to pull off. And near the end, I didn't have the skill tree fully upgraded, which is something I like. It felt like I could build Jesse to my liking. Some people might build him to be a tank that can take loads of hits, others might build him to be a glass cannon, where I build him to build up his energy so I could pull off these mad electrical combos and use my supercharged mode, which is basically Rage from God of War or Devil Trigger from DMC. It's an extremely satisfying system, and there wasn't much AA jank in the combat, which was great. The odd time I would get stuck in between an enemy and a wall, but it was fluid pretty much all of the time. Not only do you have cool combos, but you also have plenty of ranged abilities that make the combat that extra bit more unique and fun to play. The rifle and crossbow are used to hit weak points in enemies, which is a great system. It makes ranged enemies easier to kill, but they're also a lot more dangerous because these abilities really rip through you. On top of that, it splits your focus between ranged and melee combat, so you always have to be aware of your surroundings. The others are little abilities to sprinkle on your enemies, and my favourite being the stick of dynamite that, when upgraded, summons an electric tornado. Seriously, it becomes bonkers near the end. Another thing that Evil West does is the enemy variety. So typically there are two extremes. Too small a pool so that they become boring, or too much so that they don't feel unique enough. In Evil West there's a nice amount of enemies, all of which are different from the next. There were normal enemies that were fodder used to punch towards bigger enemies. These range feckers that summon these ticks that you have to kill first or they'll annoy you. And then these big shield lads that were an absolute pain. There are plenty more to give you loads of time to get acquainted with the enemies, establish the best method to kill them, and then start to mix and match them to increase the difficulty. And some of these last encounters are properly tough, but I loved figuring out how to deal with them. The combat is the best part of the game, and it knows it. I was saying how this is a very PS3-esque game and that the areas are very deliberately laid out. You know exactly when you're going into combat or a puzzle section, and the puzzles are simple and the walking between encounters is short enough so that you're never too far from more enemies. It's paced brilliantly, never letting up with the action in its 8 hours that I played of it. The game is action-packed and I finished it in 2 sittings because of how digestible it was. I never felt bored with the combat and the levels were a nice length, and the cutscenes and downtime were pretty short. In Evil West you play as Jesse Rentier, who is a part of a vampire hunting agency that works directly with the US government to keep the vampires at bay. It's an alternate history game that is fascinating. It's set roughly around the end of the 19th century into the start of the 20th century, and I love how wacky it is. It's the little journals hidden around the world that build it so well. At one point I found a picture of the head of the Rentier agency shaking hands with Abraham Lincoln. It's pretty cool in its own right, but he's actually congratulating the head of the Rentier agency on the fact that they kept the public from knowing that a so-called cholera outbreak was actually vampires killing people. In these moments, Evil West reminded me of the underrated Order 1886, and while we're never getting a sequel to the Order 1886, I hope Flying Wild Hog follows this up with a sequel. Now don't be expecting an Oscar-winning story, performances can be a bit jarring at times, and in general the writing is just okay, but that's fine by me.
I'll need a bigger lab if I'm gonna solve the mysteries of time travel, sir. I mean...
How are we doing?
Arrow needs a scapegoat. He won't leave without someone to blame for that fiasco.
The world and plot in the end were fascinating, but all I wanted was the combat, and it gave me that. Now, I had a great time with Evil West, but as I said, there was one type of gamer that I don't think will like this game. If you only play the blockbuster titles and find everything else either crap or boring, then this game isn't for you. I have an insane amount of nostalgia for the 7th gen of consoles, and I enjoy the lack of bloat in this game. But if you expect this game to be like God of War, or Red Dead Redemption 2, or The Witcher, then don't buy Evil West. Either the AA nature or rather linear, old style of the game design won't suit you. Otherwise, Evil West is an absolute banger of a game that you must play. There we have Evil West, it's fecking great. I just reviewed and ranked all PS5 exclusives, so check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.